Hey everyone, Keegs here, and we are talking episode 3 of Moon Knight. Now, this was a really big episode, I thought, and it's really starting to get into the meat of this show, and I am just so excited to see where it goes from here. So let's get into it. If you haven't seen my previous one on episode 2, you can click up here, or maybe I should link number 1 up here, because if you haven't seen that one, anyway, I'm going to link one of them up there if you want to click it. Please do. But for now, we are going to be talking about episode 3, and also be careful for spoilers if you haven't seen it, because up until episode 3, we are going to be talking everything that's happened so far. Now, it starts off with Layla getting a passport, which looks to be quite illegally getting that passport for a native citizen of Egypt. And she has someone making it for her. It looks like it's like a family friend that used to make it for her family. And really, we actually got a lot of insight as to Layla in this episode. And they dropped a lot of hints of things that have happened in her life previously. So I thought it was actually a really good episode to learn a little bit more about her. We learned that she used to be a thief, or at least someone that stole already stolen artifacts. I guess we will leave that one to the determination of the police, but we also learned that her father was actually an archaeologist, I believe, or maybe just a general historian, and he died somewhere in the desert. And the way that Arthur Harrow was talking, it sounds like he might have killed her father while he was Moon Knight. Then we get to see Marc actually fight, and he's running around Egypt hunting people down, and we see him fight as a mercenary and without his powers. So he took on those 3 guys, and might I just add, that was a very weird, bizarre fight. I don't know if those dudes were on drugs or what, but there was a lot going on in that fight. But we saw him fight, and he was a badass fighter, which is great because he's going to need that, since obviously now he doesn't have his powers anymore at the end of this episode. But we also definitely, there was a third personality in there that came out for a sec that I'm assuming they are alluding to and going to talk about more in maybe season 2. I feel like that's going to be something that gets introduced just as Marc and Steven start working together and they're flowing really well with their personalities. Then at the end of the series, then that third personality is going to come out and kind of throw a wrench back in things. Konchu was able to summon a giant eclipse, which was pretty crazy. And I feel like that is literally the extent of his power in this dimension without using his avatar. So he can do that completely on his own without his avatar, and that's about as much as he can do. But I mean, I have to imagine a bunch of scientists were really crapping their pants somewhere in the world, because or at least in Egypt, if that's the only place that this happened for. But that's quite the interesting phenomenon. But maybe they're so used to in this universe crazy things happening that they just don't even care anymore, and just are like, you know what, whatever, screw it. We end up finally getting introduced to more gods, and I say finally loosely because it's only episode 3, but I guess that's about halfway through the series, so it seems like a good time. And we meet Hathor, which is pretty cool because she is like the only person on Konchu's side, and we learn that they're not all in agreement, and they kind of fight and bicker between each other. I believe they are more allies than friends mostly, and they kind of govern themselves and can just do whatever they want to do and set their own limits and things, and they can summon you from wherever. And it's kind of interesting. They're also very blind, it feels like, when they're just like getting a warning that Arthur Harrow or Amut is doing trying to resurrect herself in the, mortal world or whatever, this dimension. And they're all like, yeah, but you're like a little mentally unstable. We don't really like you, Konchu, so we're just straight up not going to believe you. We're not going to do any further insight into it. And when Arthur Harrow is like, it's no crime to be in Egypt. No, it's not a crime, but I feel like that at least is enough evidence to kind of warrant a little further investigation as to what he's doing. If one of those gods' avatars just kind of followed him home, they would see him digging in the desert with a crew. I mean, to me, it just seems like a really weird way to have kind of written the gods out of the story. And I understand it has to fall back on Moon Knight, but it just felt like really laxed from all those other gods. But we did see that they have a bunch more power, And when they combine their power, they can literally trap other gods in tiny little statues, I guess. And they said others before him, so I'm assuming there are other gods in there, not just the regular human mummies that are in the Pyramid of Giza there. I assume he meant they've trapped other gods there before. Also, when they were talking in there, I don't know why Konchu and Marc, when he was speaking through Marc, he sounded really strained and like he was forcing Marc to do it, but all the other gods just talked like normal people, but he was just like, yes, you must do this. And everybody else just talked like, hey man, what's going on? So, I don't know, was Marc trying to suppress Konchu from speaking through his body, and that's why it was so weird? I don't know. Someone will have to let me know the answer to that if they have one. We did see Marc and Steven actually trade off a couple times willingly in this episode, which was really cool. I mean, at first, when Steven took over and then they were in that fight, and all of a sudden, as soon as he took over and was like, stop, he got stabbed through the chest like 2 or 3 times, and it was immediately like, okay, actually, I'm out. This is kind of above my pay grade here. And then Marc took back over, which I thought was really cool. And in that scene, I actually thought that Layla might die, which might become a driving force for Moon Knight in the future. But no, Moon Knight was able to save her with his marginally superhuman speed, I guess. I don't know. But we also saw Steven given control, I should say, and Marc told him to find the map, and he was able to do that. And then he did his whole thing where he pulled back time, or at least the night sky, and I think that was more of a visual effect than it was actually him pulling the sky back to that day. But it does go to show you how much more power I think Konchu has through his avatar and how much he can actually do. But I guess it kind of answers one of my questions at the end of the episode, where I thought, once Konchu left his body, he would return to being a corpse. But that is clearly not the case. Well, I say clearly, but I guess he did pass out at the end of that. But as Konchu said, Marc saved me from the other gods, I assume Konchu knows that he's not actually going to die now that Konchu's gone. So if in the future Marc and Steven ever get rid of Konchu from them, then they probably wouldn't be dead or just return to being corpses, I guess. I don't know either to that one. I think we'll just have to see a little further into the episode to really, or into the series to kind of figure questions like that out. Also, I definitely called it from my previous episodes that the different personalities were going to have different specialties, where, as we definitely now know, Marc is a fighter and a mercenary, and he kind of handles all that, and Steven is literally the brains of the operation, and he has all the ancient Egyptian knowledge, and he can piece all that stuff together himself, and that's why they're going to need each other, so they're going to need to learn to work like interchangeably and just go back and forth between each other. One of the most interesting things I will end on here is that we learn that Marc had all these different personalities throughout his whole life, but they didn't really start to kind of become a problem until after he died and became Moon Knight. So when he talks to Layla, he says they've been around his whole life, and I thought that was really interesting because he's kept them suppressed essentially inside of him. But I just wonder how many personalities he has. Clearly, he's got the 2. We think there's a 3rd one because of that time where they blacked out a little bit. And I think in the comics, he's got like 5 or 6. So I wonder how quickly they're going to introduce them. I don't think very quickly. I think the 3rd personality will not really surface until maybe the very end of this series. But thanks for joining me for episode 3 talk on Moon Knight. Let me know, where do you think this series is going? Are you enjoying it so far? I really am. And I think all the acting is really fun. I like seeing Oscar Isaac play different roles and kind of different personalities and accents and everything. So I really do appreciate that. But let me know, what do you think down below? And I will catch you next time for talk on episode 4 of Moon Knight.